If you were 70 years old and thrown out of your own home, what would you do? I had nothing. No money in my pocket. No place to go. Just the clothes on my back and a small bag with a few photographs. I was thrown onto the street. But what happened 6 months later was something my daughter-in-law never expected. Let me ask you, would you have forgiven her? My name is Margaret, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 70 years old now, though sometimes I feel like I've lived 3 lifetimes in one. This story, this story is not easy to tell, but I need to because somewhere out there, there might be another mother, another grandmother, sitting alone in the dark, wondering if they did something wrong, wondering if they deserved what happened to them. Let me take you back to the beginning. Not the beginning of this nightmare, but the real beginning, the one where I still believed in happy endings. I was born in a small town in Ohio in 1955. My father worked at the steel mill, and my mother took in laundry to make ends meet. We didn't have much, but we had love. Real love. The kind that doesn't need expensive gifts or fancy words. My mother used to say, Maggie, when you have a family of your own, you give them everything. You put them first, always. And I believed her. God, how I believed her. I met my husband Robert when he was 22, working construction, with hands rough from hard work and a smile that could light up the darkest room. We got married 6 months later in a small church ceremony. I wore my mother's wedding dress, altered to fit me. Robert wore his father's suit. We had $200 to our name and a dream of building a life together. Our son Daniel was born 2 years later. The moment they placed him in my arms, I understood what my mother meant. This tiny human, with his wrinkled face and strong lungs, became my entire world. Robert worked double shifts. I took care of Daniel during the day and cleaned offices at night, taking him with me in a baby carrier strapped to my chest. We saved every penny we could. When Daniel was 5, we finally bought our house. It wasn't much. A small 2-bedroom place with a yard barely big enough for a swing set, but it was ours. Robert built that swing set with his own hands. I planted roses along the fence. We painted Daniel's room blue, and he helped, getting more paint on himself than on the walls. Those were the happiest days of my life. Robert died when Daniel was 16. A construction accident. One moment he was there, and the next, he wasn't. The compensation from the company was enough to pay off the house and put some money aside for Daniel's future. I made a promise to Robert at his funeral. I promised I would make sure our son had a better life than we did, that he would go to college, have opportunities, never struggle the way we had. I kept that promise. I worked 3 jobs to put Daniel through college. I cleaned houses during the day, worked at a diner in the evening, and did data entry at night from home. I barely slept. My hands were always red and raw from cleaning products. My feet ached constantly. But every time I deposited money into Daniel's college fund, I felt like I was winning, like I was doing something that mattered. Daniel graduated with a degree in business administration. I was so proud. I sat in that auditorium in my best dress, the one I'd bought at a thrift store, and carefully mended, and I cried happy tears when they called his name. Robert would have been so proud too. After college, Daniel got a good job at a marketing firm in the city. He moved into his own apartment. We talked on the phone every week. He would come visit once a month, and we would have dinner together. I would cook all his favorite foods: pot roast, mashed potatoes, apple pie. He would tell me about his work, his life, his dream. I listened to every word like it was the most important thing in the world. Then he met Claire. I remember the first time he brought her home. It was a Sunday afternoon in spring. The roses were blooming, and I had spent all morning preparing a special lunch. Daniel seemed nervous, excited. He held her hand as they walked up the path to my front door. Claire was beautiful, tall, blonde, with perfect makeup and designer clothes. She smiled at me, but the smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She looked around my small living room, at my old furniture and faded curtains, and I saw something flicker across her face. Disappointment? Disdain? I couldn't quite tell. "Mom, this is Claire," Daniel said, his face glowing with happiness. "Claire, this is my mom, Maggie." "It's so nice to meet you," Claire said, her voice sweet but somehow cold at the same time. She shook my hand briefly, then immediately used hand sanitizer from her purse. I tried not to notice. I told myself I was being oversensitive, so I smiled and invited them in. I served lunch. Claire barely touched her food. She kept checking her phone under the table. When I asked her about herself, her job, her family, her answers were short, polite, but distant. Daniel didn't seem to notice. He was completely enchanted with her, and I wanted him to be happy, so I pushed aside my concerns. I told myself that maybe she was just nervous about meeting me, that she would warm up over time. They dated for 2 years before Daniel proposed. He asked my blessing first, which touched me deeply. "Mom, I love her. I want to spend my life with her. She makes me so happy." What could I say? My son was in love. I gave him my blessing and hugged him tight. I gave him the money I had been saving. It wasn't much, but it was enough to help with the wedding and a down payment on a house. "This is for your future, sweetheart. Use it to build something beautiful." The wedding was expensive, much more expensive than I could afford. But Claire's parents were wealthy, and they paid for most of it. I felt out of place at the reception, surrounded by people in expensive clothes, drinking champagne I couldn't pronounce, but I was there for Daniel. I danced with him. I told him how proud his father would have been. I meant every word. After the wedding, things started to change slowly. At first, it was small things. Daniel's weekly phone calls became every other week. Then once a month, when I called him, Claire would often answer and say he was busy, that he would call me back. He rarely did. Their visits became less frequent. When they did come over, Claire would make comments. "Maggie, you really should update this place. It's so dated. Or don't you think it's time to move somewhere smaller? This house is too much for one person to maintain." Always said with a smile, but with an edge that cut. I started to feel like I was walking on eggshells around her. I tried to be the best mother-in-law I could be. I never dropped by unannounced. I never gave unsolicited advice. I sent birthday cards and Christmas gifts. I babysat whenever they asked, which wasn't often. Then 3 years into their marriage, Claire got pregnant. I was overjoyed. I was going to be a grandmother. I knitted blankets, bought toys, prepared my spare room for visits. I dreamed of holding my grandchild, of reading bedtime stories, of passing on all the love I had given Daniel. But after the baby was born, a beautiful little girl they named Emma, things got worse. Claire barely let me see her. When I asked to visit, there was always an excuse. "Emma's sleeping. We're too busy. Maybe next month." When I did get to visit, Claire hovered, watching everything I did, correcting me constantly. "That's not how we hold her. Don't sing that song. It's too loud. You're doing it wrong." I felt like I couldn't do anything right. But I kept trying. I kept showing up with gifts, with food, with love. Because that's what mothers do. That's what grandmothers do. Daniel changed too. He became distant, stressed. The spark in his eyes that I'd known since he was a baby started to fade. When I asked him if everything was okay, he would just say, "It's fine, Mom. Just work stress." But I knew my son, Something was wrong. The breaking point came on a cold winter day 6 months ago. It was January, and there had been a heavy snowfall. My heating had broken down, and I was trying to save money to get it fixed. I called Daniel, just to hear his voice, to feel connected to my family. Claire answered. Maggie, Daniel's busy. I know, sweetheart. I just wanted to say hello. Maybe see if you all would like to come for dinner this week. There was a long pause. Then Claire said, Actually, Maggie, we need to talk. Can you come over tomorrow? My heart sank, but I said yes. I had a bad feeling, but I told myself I was being paranoid. The next day, I took 2 buses to get to their house in the suburbs. It was a beautiful house, big and modern, so different from my small old home. Daniel had done well for himself. I was proud, even if it hurt that he seemed to be moving further away from me with each passing year. Claire opened the door. She didn't smile. Come in. Daniel was sitting on the couch in the living room. He looked uncomfortable, wouldn't meet my eyes. Emma was at daycare. The house felt cold, sterile. Sit down, Maggie, Claire said. It wasn't a request. I sat in the armchair across from them, my hands folded in my lap, trying to ignore the anxiety crawling up my spine. Claire looked at Daniel. He said nothing, so she began. Maggie, we've been talking, and we think it's time for some changes. You're getting older. Living alone in that house isn't safe anymore. The neighborhood isn't what it used to be. The house is falling apart. You can barely afford to maintain it. I started to speak, but she held up her hand. We think it would be best if you sold the house and moved into a senior living facility. There's a nice one, not far from here. You would have people around, activities, medical care if you need it. You could make friends your own age. I looked at Daniel. Sweetheart, is this what you want? He finally looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that broke my heart. Guilt, but also something else. Resignation. Weakness. Mom, Claire's right. You're alone in that house. What if something happens? What if you fall? What if there's an emergency? We worry about you. I'm fine, I said, my voice shaking. I don't need to move. That house, that's my home. Your father built that swing set in the backyard. We painted your room together. All my memories are there. Claire sighed, like I was a difficult child refusing to see reason. Maggie, this isn't about sentimentality. This is about what's practical, what's best for everyone. Best for everyone, I repeated. Or best for you. Her eyes went cold. Excuse me? You've never liked me, I said quietly. You've never liked that house. You think I'm an embarrassment. Old, poor, not good enough for your perfect life. That's not true, Daniel said, but his voice lacked conviction. Claire stood up. Maggie, I've tried to be patient with you. I've tried to be kind, but you're making this very difficult. The truth is, Daniel and I need to focus on our family, on Emma, on our future. We can't keep worrying about you and your problems. We can't keep supporting you. Supporting me? I felt like I'd been slapped. I've never asked you for anything. I've never been a burden. The house, Maggie. Daniel has been paying for repairs, for your utilities when you fall behind, for your groceries when your Social Security doesn't stretch far enough. We've been supporting you, and we can't keep doing it. I looked at Daniel. Is this true? He nodded, still not meeting my eyes. Mom, I wanted to help. I didn't want you to struggle. Why didn't you tell me? I would have found a way. I would have worked more hours. You're 70 years old. Claire snapped. You shouldn't have to work more hours. You should be in a place where you're taken care of, where you're not a burden on your family. That word, burden, hung in the air like poison. So what are you saying? I asked, even though I already knew. I could feel it coming, like a storm on the horizon. Claire crossed her arms. We're saying that if you won't sell the house and move into a senior facility, then we can't have you in our lives anymore. We need boundaries. We need to protect our family. I'm family, I whispered. You're not listening, Claire said, her voice rising. You're selfish. You're clinging to a house you can't afford, to a past that's gone. You're making everything about you when we have a child to think about. Emma doesn't need to see her father stressed and exhausted because his mother won't accept reality. I turned to Daniel, desperate. Danny, please, don't do this. I'm your mother. I raised you. I sacrificed everything for you. And that's when he said the words that destroyed me. Maybe that's the problem, Mom. Maybe you sacrificed too much. Maybe you made me feel guilty my whole life for everything you gave up. I can't carry that anymore. I can't. The room spun. I felt like I was falling, even though I was sitting still. This was my son, my baby boy, the child I had held through nightmares, nursed through illnesses, cheered on at every milestone. And he was telling me that my love, my sacrifice was a burden he couldn't carry. Claire smiled, but it wasn't kind. It was triumphant. She had won. I think you should leave now, Maggie, and until you're ready to make the right decision, I don't think it's best for you to contact us. We need space. Emma needs stability, not an elderly grandmother who refuses to accept help. I stood up on shaking legs. I looked at Daniel one more time, hoping he would stop this, would remember who I was, what we were to each other. But he just sat there, staring at his hands. I walked out of that house in a daze. I took the 2 buses home. I sat in my cold living room, surrounded by memories, and I cried. I cried for hours. I cried until there were no tears left, only a hollow, aching emptiness. Over the next few days, I tried calling Daniel. He didn't answer. I sent texts. No response. I even drove to his house once, but no one answered the door. Even though I could see lights on inside, I was alone. Truly alone. At 70 years old, I had no one. The bills started piling up. Without Daniel's help, which I hadn't even known I was receiving, I couldn't keep up. The heating bill, the electric bill, property taxes. I tried to find work, but who wants to hire a 70-year-old woman? I applied everywhere. Fast food restaurants, grocery stores, cleaning services, nothing. I started selling things. First, items I didn't need. Then items I thought I didn't need. Then items that broke my heart to part with. Robert's tools, Daniel's baby clothes, my mother's china. I sold it all. Piece by piece, just to survive. But it wasn't enough. 2 months after that terrible day, I got an eviction notice. The bank was foreclosing on my house. I had fallen too far behind on the mortgage, on the property taxes. I had 30 days to leave. I had nowhere to go, no family. My few friends from the old neighborhood had either moved away or passed on. I called a social worker, but the waiting list for subsidized senior housing was years long. I looked into shelters, but they were overcrowded, and the thought of sleeping in a room full of strangers terrified me. I spent those 30 days in a fog. I packed my things, or what was left of them. I sold more items. I tried one more time to reach Daniel. I sent him a letter, telling him about the foreclosure, telling him I wasn't asking for money. Just to hear from him, to know he still cared. He never responded. On the day I had to leave, it was snowing again, heavy, wet snow that made everything look clean and pure, even though underneath, everything was broken. I stood in my empty living room, looking at the marks on the wall, where pictures had hung, at the worn spot on the floor, where Robert's rocking chair used to be, at the window where I used to watch for Daniel to come home from school. I locked the door for the last time and left the keys in the mailbox for the bank. I had one suitcase with clothes, one bag with photographs and documents, and $87 in my pocket. That was all I had left from 70 years of life. I walked to the bus stop, not knowing where I was going. I just knew I had to keep moving. I ended up at a women's shelter across town. It was crowded, noisy, and smelled like disinfectant and despair, but it was warm, and they gave me a bed and a meal. The other women there were mostly younger, dealing with their own nightmare, addiction, abuse, mental illness. I was the oldest person there. I kept to myself. I followed the rules. I looked for work during the day and came back at night, but finding a job was impossible, and the shelter had a 90-day maximum stay. After that, I would be back on the street. I started to understand how people end up homeless. It's not always because of drugs, or laziness, or bad choices. Sometimes it's just bad luck, a series of events beyond your control that push you off the edge, and suddenly you're falling, and there's nothing to grab onto. I thought about giving up. I really did. I thought about just walking into the snow one night and letting the cold take me. At least then I would be with Robert again. At least then the pain would stop. But something in me, some stubborn spark that had survived poverty and loss and betrayal, wouldn't let me quit. Not yet. I heard about a church program that helped seniors. They provided temporary housing in exchange for helping with church activities. It wasn't much. A small room in the church basement, shared bathrooms, cafeteria-style meals, but it was something. I applied and was accepted. I moved into that basement room with my suitcase and my bag of memories. I helped in the church kitchen, prepared food for community meals, cleaned the sanctuary. The work was familiar, comforting even. It gave me purpose. I made friends there, other women like me, discarded by families who found them inconvenient. We shared our stories late at night, sitting in that basement, drinking cheap tea. We cried together. We laughed together. We survived together. One woman, named Rosa, became particularly close to me. She was 68, had been a teacher before her daughter and son-in-law decided she was too much trouble. Rosa was wise, funny, and kind. She taught me something important. Maggie, she said one night, you can't keep waiting for your son to remember he has a mother. You can't keep hoping he'll realize what he's lost. You have to build a new life, not the life you expected, but a life worth living anyway. She was right. So I stopped waiting. I stopped hoping. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes for a message that would never come. I started to heal. I took classes at the community center, computer skills, so I could look for work online. I volunteered at a literacy program, teaching adults to read. I discovered I was good at it, patient, and encouraging. It made me feel useful again. Slowly, very slowly, I began to feel like a person again, not just a discarded mother, but Margaret Elizabeth Thompson, a woman with value and purpose. And then, 6 months after being thrown out of my son's house, there was a knock on my door. It was late evening. I was in my small basement room, reading a library book. The knock was hesitant, almost apologetic. I opened the door, and there was Claire. She looked terrible. Her perfect blonde hair was tangled and unwashed. Her makeup was smudged, and there were dark circles under her eyes. She was wearing an expensive coat, but it was wrinkled and stained. She had a suitcase with her. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then she started to cry. Maggie, please, I need your help. I have nowhere else to go. I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt vindicated, but all I felt was tired. What happened? I asked, not moving from the doorway. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her mascara further. Daniel, he left me. He took Emma and moved in with another woman. He said I was the problem, that I was controlling and manipulative, and that he couldn't take it anymore. He said I turned him against you, and he couldn't forgive me for that. I felt a complex tangle of emotion, pain that my son had left his wife and child, relief that maybe he had finally seen the truth, anger at Claire for causing all this, and despite everything, pity for the broken woman standing in front of me. Why did you come here? I asked. Because I have nobody else, she sobbed. My parents, when they found out about the divorce, they were furious. They blamed me. They said I destroyed a good marriage, that Daniel was a good man, and I drove him away. They cut me off financially. I don't have access to our bank accounts. Daniel changed all the passwords and froze the card. I tried to stay with friends, but nobody wants to get involved in a messy divorce. I've been living in my car for 3 days. Please, Maggie, I know I don't deserve your help. I know what I did to you was unforgivable, but I'm begging you. I have nowhere to go. I stood there, looking at this woman who had taken everything from me, who had convinced my son to throw me away like garbage. She was now broken, desperate, begging me for the mercy she never showed me. Would you have forgiven her? I asked, my voice quiet but steady. Claire looked confused. What? If you were in my position, if someone had treated you the way you treated me, would you forgive them? She didn't answer. She just cried harder. I took a deep breath, and then I made a decision that would have surprised the Maggie from 6 months ago. The Maggie who had cried herself to sleep every night, who had felt worthless and discarded, but I wasn't that Maggie anymore. No, I said simply. Claire's head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock and fear. What? No, I won't help you. Not because I'm cruel or because I want revenge, but because you need to learn the lesson I learned. That sometimes you lose everything. That sometimes the people you trust betray you. That sometimes you have to rebuild from nothing. But I have nowhere. Neither did I interrupted. When you and Daniel threw me out, I had $87 and a suitcase. You have a car, expensive clothes you can sell, and you're young enough to work. I was 70 years old with nothing. If I survived, so can you. Please, she whispered. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. Are you sorry for what you did? Or are you sorry that you're facing consequences? She didn't answer. There's a women's shelter on 5th Street, I said. They can help you. They helped me. There are social services, job programs, resources. You'll have to humble yourself. You'll have to accept help from strangers. You'll have to work hard and be grateful for small kindnesses, just like I did. You're really not going to help me? She asked, disbelief in her voice. I am helping you, I said. I'm teaching you something you never learned. That actions have consequences. That people aren't disposable. That kindness and respect matter. If I take you in now, save you from your situation, you'll learn nothing. You'll just find someone else to use when you get back on your feet. I started to close the door. What about Emma? Claire said desperately. Don't you want to see your granddaughter? I paused. That was a low blow, and she knew it. If Daniel has Emma, then she's safe, I said. And when the time is right, if he wants me in her life, he knows where to find me. But I won't be manipulated anymore. Not by you, not by anyone. You're heartless, Claire spat, her desperation turning to anger. I was right about you. You're a bitter, selfish old woman. I smiled, and it was genuine. Maybe I am, or maybe I just finally learned to value myself. Good luck, Claire. I truly hope you find your way, but you won't find it through me. I closed the door. I heard her crying on the other side, then eventually footsteps walking away. I sat on my bed, shaking, not from fear or regret, but from the enormousness of what I had just done. I had stood up for myself. I had said no. I had refused to be a victim anymore. Rosa knocked on my door a few minutes later. She had heard everything from her room next door. "Are you okay?" she asked. I nodded. "I think I am. For the first time in a long time. I really am." She hugged me. "You did the right thing. You can't save someone who pushed you off a cliff, especially when they're not even sorry for pushing you." Over the next few weeks, I heard through the church grapevine what happened to Claire. She did go to the women's shelter. She got a job at a retail store. She found a small apartment. She was slowly rebuilding her life, just as I had told her she could. And Daniel, I heard nothing from him. No apology, no attempt to reach out. Sometimes I wondered if he even thought about me, if he felt guilty about what he had done, or if Claire had been right, and I had made him feel so burdened by my sacrifices that he was relieved to be free of me. It hurt. Of course it hurt. He was my son, my only child. I loved him more than life itself, but I also knew that I couldn't force him to love me back. I couldn't make him see what he had done. He had to come to that realization himself, if he ever would. I focused on my own life. I got a part-time job at the community center, teaching adult literacy classes. It didn't pay much, but it was enough, combined with my social security, to rent a small studio apartment. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I decorated it with my photographs, my memories. I made it home. I made new friends. I joined a book club at the library. I volunteered at a food bank. I lived, really lived, maybe for the first time since Robert died. I wasn't living for Daniel anymore, or for some idealized version of what a mother should be. I was living for me. 3 months after Claire showed up at my door, I got a letter. It was from Daniel. My hands shook as I opened it. The letter was short. "Mom, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if you'll even want to hear from me, but I need to say this. I'm so incredibly sorry for what I did to you. There's no excuse. I was weak. I let Claire manipulate me. I let her convince me that you were a burden when you were the greatest blessing of my life. I threw away the one person who loved me unconditionally, who sacrificed everything for me. Claire and I are divorced. I have custody of Emma. I'm living in a small apartment and working 2 jobs to make ends meet. It's hard. Every day is a struggle, and every day I think about you, about how you worked 3 jobs to put me through college, about how you never complained, never made me feel guilty, even when you had every right to. I finally understand what you gave me, and I understand what I threw away. I found out where you're living through the church. I know you're teaching literacy classes. I know you're doing well. I'm so proud of you, Mom. You survived what I did to you. You rebuilt. You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to want me in your life again. But I needed you to know that I see it now. I see what I did, and I'm sorry. If you ever want to meet, to talk, I would be grateful. But if you don't, I understand. I love you, Mom. I always have. I just forgot how to show it. Daniel, I read the letter 3 times. I cried, but they weren't tears of pain this time. They were tears of something else. Closure, maybe. Acknowledgement. I thought about it for a week. Rosa and I talked about it for hours. "What do you want to do?" she asked. "I don't know," I admitted. Part of me wants to see him, to hold Emma, to be a grandmother, but part of me is terrified. What if he hurts me again? What if this is just temporary guilt, and as soon as his life gets better, he forgets about me again? Rosa nodded. Those are valid fears, but let me ask you this. If you don't respond, if you don't try, will you regret it? I thought about it, and I realized the answer was yes. I would regret it, not because I needed Daniel to feel complete, but because I still loved him. Despite everything, he was still my son, but I also knew that if I did reach out, it would be on different terms. I wasn't the same woman who had been thrown out 6 months ago. I was stronger now. I had boundaries. I wouldn't accept crumbs of affection, or let myself be treated as an afterthought. I wrote back, "Daniel, I received your letter. Thank you for your apology. It means more than you know. What you did hurt me deeply. It broke something in me that took a long time to heal. But I've learned something important in these past months. I've learned that I'm more than just a mother. I'm a person with value, with purpose, with a life of my own. I'm willing to meet with you, but things will be different now. I won't be the mother who accepts any treatment just to be in your life. I won't sacrifice my dignity for your convenience. If we rebuild our relationship, it will be based on mutual respect and honesty. I want to meet Emma. I want to be her grandmother. But I need to know that you won't take that away from me. The moment things get difficult or uncomfortable, think about what I've said. If you truly want me in your life, on these terms, call me. We can meet at the park near your apartment. Neutral ground. I love you too, son. I never stop. But love isn't enough. We need trust too, and that will take time. Mom. I mailed the letter and waited. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was Daniel. Mom? His voice was shaking. Hello, Daniel. I got your letter. I understand. I understand everything you said. And you're right. I don't expect you to trust me immediately, but I want to try. I want to be your son again, the son you deserve. We talked for an hour, really talked. He told me about his marriage, about how Claire had slowly isolated him from everyone who cared about him, how she had made him feel guilty for loving me. He told me about the moment he realized what he had done, when Emma had asked about her grandma, and he had no good answer to give her. She deserves to know you, he said. The real you, the grandmother, who knits blankets and makes apple pie, and tells stories, not the person Claire made you out to be. We agreed to meet the following Saturday at the park. I was nervous that morning. I changed clothes 3 times. Rosa laughed at me and told me I looked beautiful. Just be yourself, she said. That's all you need to be. I arrived at the park a few minutes early. It was a beautiful day, warm for late summer. With a gentle breeze, children were playing on the swings, families were having picnics. It felt hopeful. Then I saw them. Daniel, pushing a stroller, walking toward me. My heart. When he reached me, we stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. He looked older, tired. There were lines on his face that hadn't been there before. But his eyes were clear, honest. Hi, Mom, he said softly. Hi, sweetheart. Then he hugged me, and I hugged him back, and we both cried. When we finally pulled apart, he bent down to the stroller. Emma, I want you to meet someone very special. This is your grandma. He lifted her out of the stroller. She was 3 years old now, with Daniel's dark hair and bright, curious eyes. She looked at me with interest, but no recognition. Hi, Emma, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I'm your Grandma Maggie. She studied me seriously. Then she said, Do you have cookies? Daniel and I both laughed. Not today, sweetheart, but next time I see you, I'll bring cookies, and I'll teach you how to make them yourself. Would you like that? She nodded enthusiastically. We spent the afternoon in the park. We talked, really talked, for the first time in years. Daniel told me everything. I told him about my time at the shelter, at the church, about my new job and my new friends. He listened, really listened, with tears in his eyes. Mom, I'm so sorry you went through that. I'm so sorry I put you through that. I know you are, I said, and I forgive you, but we can't go back to how things were. We move forward. We build something new. He nodded. I understand, and I want that. I want you in our lives, Emma's and mine. But on your terms. You set the boundaries. You tell me what you need. It felt strange, having my son ask me what I needed. For so long I had been the one accommodating, adjusting, sacrificing, but it also felt right. Over the next few months, we slowly rebuilt our relationship. It wasn't always easy. There were moments when old patterns tried to emerge, when I caught myself apologizing for things that weren't my fault, or when Daniel slipped into taking me for granted. But we talked through it. We were honest with each other in ways we had never been before. I became a regular part of Emma's life. I picked her up from daycare once a week. We baked cookies together in my small kitchen. I read her stories. I taught her the songs my mother had taught me. She called me Grandma Maggie, and every time she said it, my heart filled with joy. Daniel asked about Claire once. Have you heard from her? No, I said. Have you? He shook his head. She's living across town. She has a job, a small apartment. She's doing okay, I think. She asked to see Emma, and I said yes, but with supervised visits. I need to make sure Emma is safe. That's wise, I said. Do you hate her? He asked. I thought about it. No, I don't hate her. I feel sorry for her. She was so focused on money and status and appearances that she destroyed everything real in her life. That's a terrible way to live. You're a better person than I am, Daniel said. I'm still angry at her, at myself too, for letting her change me into someone I didn't recognize. Anger is okay, I told him. It's part of healing. Just don't let it consume you. Don't let it make you bitter. One day, about a year after that first meeting in the park, Daniel came to my apartment with a serious expression. Mom, I need to talk to you about something. My heart jumped. Old fears rose up. Was he going to pull away again? Had something changed? What is it? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. I've been saving money, he said, working extra hours, being careful with spending, and I want to do something for you, not out of guilt, not to make myself feel better, but because you deserve it. He pulled out an envelope and handed it to me. Inside was a check, a large check, more money than I had seen in years. What is this? I asked, shocked. It's half of what I took from you, the money you had saved, that I stole to go to Rome with Claire. I've been paying it back to myself, bit by bit, so I could give it to you. I know it doesn't make up for what I did. I know money can't fix the pain I caused, but it's a start. I stared at the check, tears blurring my vision. Daniel, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just take it. Use it however you want. Save it. Spend it. Donate it. It's yours. It was always yours. I took the check with shaking hands, but more valuable than the money was what it represented. Accountability. Restitution. A son who had learned what it meant to make amends. Thank you, I whispered. He hugged me tight. Thank you for giving me another chance. Thank you for teaching me what real strength looks like. With that money, I was able to move to a slightly bigger apartment, 2 bedrooms, so Emma could have her own room when she stayed over on weekends. I furnished it simply but comfortably. I hung photos on the walls, photos of Robert, of Daniel as a child, of Emma, photos of my new friends from the church and the community center, a life documented in pictures. Emma loved having her own room at Grandma's house. We painted it together, pale yellow with white trim. I bought her a small bed, with a quilt I had made myself. We put up shelves for her books and toys. It became her special place. Daniel and I fell into a routine. He would drop Emma off on Friday evenings, and I would keep her until Sunday afternoon. We had our traditions. Friday night was pizza and a movie. Saturday mornings we baked together. Saturday afternoons we went to the park, or the library, or the children's museum. Sunday mornings we made pancakes, and Sunday afternoons we did quiet activities, reading or drawing, or doing puzzles. I loved those weekends. I loved being a grandmother. But on my own terms. I wasn't the live-in babysitter, or the desperate old woman grateful for any scraps of attention. I was Grandma Maggie, And I had my own life, my own schedule, my own boundaries. Daniel respected those boundaries. If he needed extra help, he asked. And sometimes I said yes and sometimes I said no, and he accepted both answers without complaint or guilt trips. I continued my work. At the community center, I was promoted to coordinator of the literacy program. I trained other volunteers. I wrote grant proposals. I made a difference in people's lives. And it felt good, it felt meaningful. Rose and I remained close friends. She found her own apartment eventually, reconnected with a son who had been looking for her. We had coffee every Tuesday and went to the movies every month. She met Daniel and Emma and loved them both. You built a good life, she told me once. Not the life you expected, but a good one. She was right. It wasn't the life I had imagined when I was young, when I married Robert and dreamed of growing old, surrounded by family in the house we had bought together. But it was a life I had built myself, from nothing, and that made it precious. 2 years after being thrown out, I was invited to speak at a women's shelter. They wanted me to share my story, to give hope to women who felt they had lost everything. I was nervous. I had never been good at public speaking, but I agreed, because I remembered how hopeless I had felt in that shelter, how I had thought my life was over. There were about 30 women in the room, young and old, from all different backgrounds, but they all had the same look in their eyes: fear, desperation, the look of people who had fallen and didn't know if they could get back up. I stood in front of them and told my story. I didn't leave anything out: the betrayal, the homelessness, the despair, but I also told them about the rebuilding, the small victories, the moment I realized I was more than my circumstances. I'm not going to tell you it's easy, I said. It's not. There will be days when you want to give up, when you feel like the world has beaten you down so far that you'll never stand again. But you will. You will because you're stronger than you think. You will because you have to. Not for anyone else, but for yourself. I told them about setting boundaries, about learning to value themselves, about building a life based on their own terms, not on someone else's expectation. When I finished, the room was silent. Then one woman started clapping, then another. Soon the whole room was applauding, and some women were crying. Afterwards, several women came up to talk to me, to thank me, to tell me their own stories. One young woman, maybe 30 years old, grabbed my hand. I needed to hear this, she said, tears streaming down her face. I needed to know that I can survive this, that there's life after rock bottom. There is, I assured her. I promise you. There is. That night, as I sat in my apartment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Not pride in what I had accomplished, though that was part of it, but pride in who I had become. I had been broken, and I had put myself back together. I had been discarded, and I had found my own value. I thought about the question I had asked at the beginning of this story. If you were 70 years old and thrown out of your own home, what would you do? I know what I did. I survived. I rebuilt. I forgave. But I didn't forget. I opened my heart again. But I protected it too. I learned that love doesn't mean accepting abuse, that family isn't an excuse for mistreatment, that I deserved respect and kindness, just like anyone else. Would I have forgiven Claire? No. Not because I'm cruel or vindictive, but because some bridges are meant to stay burned. She needed to learn her own lessons, fight her own battles, just as I had fought mine. But Daniel, yes, I forgave him. Not immediately, not easily, but eventually, because I saw genuine remorse, because he took action to make amends, because he changed, and because despite everything, I still loved him. Not the desperate, sacrificing love of before, but a healthier love, a love with boundaries and self-respect. Emma is 5 years old now. She's smart, funny, kind. She doesn't know the full story of what happened, and she doesn't need to. She just knows that Grandma Maggie is always there for her, that our weekends together are special, that love is shown through actions, not just words. Daniel has a new job now, a better one. He's dating someone, a teacher named Sarah, who is kind and genuine. She treats me with respect, asks my opinion, includes me in family activities. We're not close yet, but we're building a relationship based on mutual respect, and that's enough. I'm 72 years old now. My hair is completely gray. My hands are wrinkled and spotted. My knees ache when it rains, but I'm happy, really, truly happy. I have my work at the community center, which gives me purpose. I have my friends who give me companionship and laughter. I have my apartment, small but mine, decorated with memories and hope. And I have my family, Daniel and Emma, and maybe, someday, Sarah too. A family that respects me, values me, loves me. Sometimes I think about that day when Claire showed up at my door, desperate and broken. Sometimes I wonder if I should have helped her, if I was too harsh, too unforgiving. But then I remember something Rosa told me. Maggie, you can't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, especially not someone who threw you out in the cold. She was right. Helping Claire wouldn't have helped her. It would have enabled her, taught her that she could treat people terribly and still be rescued from the consequences. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone face their own consequences, learn their own lessons. I heard through Daniel that Claire eventually got her life together. She has a job she likes, a small circle of friends, and regular supervised visits with Emma. She hasn't apologized to me, and I don't expect her to. We exist in separate orbits now, connected only through Emma, and that's fine. I don't waste energy on anger or resentment anymore. Life's too short, and I've lost too much time already to negative emotions. Instead, I focus on gratitude for the second chance I've been given, for the strength I found within myself, for the people who helped me when I had nothing. Every morning I wake up in my small apartment, and I make myself a cup of coffee. I sit by the window and watch the world wake up, and I think about how far I've come. From that broken woman standing in the snow with $87 in a suitcase, to this, a whole life, built from ruins. I think about the women at the shelter, the ones I spoke to and the countless others I'll never meet, the ones who feel like their lives are over because they've lost their homes, their families, their sense of self. I hope they find what I found. Not just survival, but a reason to survive. Not just existence, but a life worth living. I think about mothers everywhere, who sacrifice everything for their children, who give and give and give until there's nothing left. I want to tell them, you matter too. Your needs matter. Your happiness matters. Don't lose yourself in loving someone else. And I think about children, adult children, who take their parents for granted, who see their mothers' sacrifices as obligations rather than gifts, who get so caught up in their own lives that they forget where they came from. I want to tell them, appreciate your parents while they're here. Don't wait until it's too late. Don't let anyone convince you that the people who love you most are burdens. But mostly, I think about the question I posed at the beginning. Would you have forgiven her? Would you have forgiven him? The answer is complicated. Forgiveness isn't a single moment, a single decision. It's a process. It's choosing, every day, not to let anger and hurt consume you. It's recognizing that people are complex, that they can be both the person who hurt you and the person who loves you. I forgave Daniel because he earned it. He didn't just say sorry, he changed. He made amends. He rebuilt trust through consistent, loving actions over time. That's what real apology looks like. Not words, but change. I didn't forgive Claire because she didn't earn it. She was sorry she got caught. Sorry she faced consequences. But not sorry for what she did. And that's okay. I don't need her apology to move on. I don't need her forgiveness or understanding or validation. I found all of that within myself. Today is Sunday. Daniel and Sarah are bringing Emma over for dinner. I've made a pot roast, just like I used to make for Daniel when he was a boy. The same recipe my mother taught me. I've set the table with my simple dishes. I've put flowers in a vase in the center. My home is small, but it's warm and welcoming. It smells like cooking food and fresh laundry. It looks lived in, loved in. This is my space, my sanctuary, my castle. There's a knock on the door. I open it, and there's Emma, holding a drawing she made for me. Behind her are Daniel and Sarah, smiling. "Hi, Grandma Mag," Emma shouts, throwing herself into my arms. I hug her tight, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo. "Hi, my sweet girl." We go inside. Daniel kisses my cheek. Sarah hands me a bottle of wine and thanks me for having them over. We sit down to eat, and we talk and laugh. We're a family, not a perfect family, but a real one. As I look around my table at these people I love, I feel a deep sense of peace. I made it. I survived. I built something beautiful from ashes and pain and loss. And if I could go back and tell that 70-year-old woman standing in the snow, crying and afraid and alone, I would tell her this: you are stronger than you know. You will survive this. You will build a life more authentic and meaningful than the one you lost. You will find yourself, and you will like what you find. The road will be hard. There will be days when you want to give up, but keep going. Keep putting one foot in front of the other. Keep believing that you deserve better. Keep fighting for yourself, because you do deserve better. You deserve respect and kindness and love. You deserve to be valued. You deserve to take up space in the world without apologizing for it. And eventually, you'll wake up one day and realize that you're not just surviving anymore. You're living, really living. That's my story. That's my answer to the question, what would you do if you were 70 years old and thrown out of your own home? You would do what I did. You would survive. You would rebuild. You would rediscover your worth. And you would create a life that honors the strength it took to get there. Would I have forgiven her? Would I have forgiven him? Those questions aren't really the point. The point is, did I forgive myself? Did I forgive myself for the years I spent being small, being accommodating, being less than I was? Did I forgive myself for not seeing the warning signs, for not standing up sooner, for not valuing myself enough? Yes, I did. And that forgiveness, that self-love, that acceptance of my own worth, that's what saved me. Not Daniel's apology, not Claire's downfall, but my own decision to believe that I mattered. So if you're out there, reading this, listening to this, and you're in a dark place, if you feel discarded or forgotten or worthless, if you think your life is over because someone you loved threw you away, please hear me. Your life is not over. This is not the end of your story. This is the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter where you are the hero, not the victim, a chapter where you discover strength you didn't know you had, a chapter where you build something beautiful from ruins. It won't be easy, but it will be worth it. And someday, years from now, you'll tell your story, and someone will ask you, how did you survive? How did you do it? And you'll say, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment at a time. I chose to believe I was worth saving, and I chose to be the one who saved myself. That's what I want you to remember. Not the betrayal, not the pain, not the people who hurt you, but this: you are worth saving. You are worth fighting for. You are worth the effort it takes to rebuild. So do it. Fight, rebuild, survive, and then, when you're ready, do more than survive. Live, really, truly live, because you deserve it. We all do. Emma is tugging on my sleeve now, asking me to read her a story. After dinner, Daniel is laughing at something Sarah said. The pot roast is ready, and steam rises from the serving dish, filling the room with warmth and the smell of home. I smile. This is my life now. This is what I built from nothing. This is my answer to those who thought I was disposable, who thought being old meant being worthless. I am 72 years old. I was thrown away like garbage, and I turned that garbage into gold. I turned my pain into purpose. I turned my ending into a beginning. So yes, I forgave, but more importantly, I survived. I thrived. I won. And that, my friend, is the real story, not the question of forgiveness, but the journey of self-discovery, not the people who left, but the person I became when I was alone. That's what I want you to take from this, not whether you should forgive those who hurt you, but whether you'll forgive yourself for not seeing your own value sooner, not whether others will save you, but whether you'll save yourself, because in the end, that's all that matters. That you looked in the mirror, saw yourself clearly, and decided you were worth saving. I did that, and if I can do it at 70, after losing everything, then so can you. So can you. The story doesn't end here, of course. Life goes on. There will be more chapters, more challenges, more joys and sorrows. Emma will grow up. Daniel will continue to rebuild his relationship with me. Maybe Sarah will become part of our family permanently. Maybe I'll face new health challenges, new obstacles. But whatever comes, I know I can handle it, because I've already survived the worst. And if I can survive that, I can survive anything. That's the gift that terrible experience gave me. Not happiness, not justice, not revenge, but confidence. The unshakable knowledge that I am strong enough to handle whatever life throws at me, and you are too. Remember that, in your darkest moments, remember that you are stronger than you think, that you can survive more than you imagine, that endings can become beginnings, if you're brave enough to start over. I was 70 years old when I learned that lesson. Don't wait as long as I did. Learn it now. Value yourself now. Set your boundaries now. Build your strength now, because you never know when you'll need it. You never know when the people you trust most will let you down. You never know when you'll have to save yourself. Be ready, be strong, be your own hero. That's my message, that's my story, that's my answer to the question that started all of this. What would you do if you were 70 years old and thrown out of your own home? I survived, I rebuilt, I rediscovered myself. I created a life worth living, and I did it all on my own terms, with my own strength, for my own reasons. That's what I would do. That's what I did. The question is, what would you do? What will you do when life knocks you down? Will you stay down, or will you get back up? Will you let others define your worth, or will you define it yourself? Will you accept crumbs of affection, or will you demand the respect you deserve? Those are the questions that matter, not whether you forgive those who hurt you, but whether you forgive yourself for accepting less than you deserved, not whether others change, but whether you change, not whether you're loved by others, but whether you love yourself. Answer those questions, answer them honestly, and then act accordingly. That's all I can tell you, that's all I know. The rest is up to you. Just remember, you're stronger than you think, you're worth more than you've been told, and it's never too late to start over, to rebuild, to create the life you deserve. I'm proof of that, living, breathing proof, and if I can do it, so can you.